Hello, so congratulations, you've made it so far. So you have done your interviews with an agency and now you have a job offer. And the last hurdle you need to skip is this visa interview at the embassy so that you can be on your way to the US. Welcome, my name is Benson. Today I'm going to share with you some 30 common J1 and H1B teacher interview questions that come up when you go to the consular office. This list, guys, of course, I cannot claim to be exhaustive. Questions will always depend on the consular officer. They may decide to ask something that has never been asked before. But from my experience of interacting with teachers, over the years, and my own questions that I was asked, I would say these are some of the common questions that come up during those teacher visa interviews. So, even before we get to the questions, I would want to share a few tips that I feel if you follow these, you will give yourself a better chance at your embassy. Number one, make sure that you're audible enough. Project your voice when you're speaking to the consular officer on the other side of the counter. I'm not suggesting that you shout, but make sure your voice is audible enough. Make sure you're speaking confidently. Wear a smile. It makes it easy and kind of easy going with the consular officer. And of course, everyone likes that warm smile. Be honest, speak honestly. I would say everything that you say, make sure it rhymes with what you wrote on the DS 160. And that's what I have actually here on the last point, that everything you say must rhyme with what you wrote in your DS 160. Otherwise, the information could be interpreted by the consular officer as being dishonest. So what you wrote is very key, guys, is very important. My advice is the day just before you go to the embassy, make sure you go through your DS-160 form again. Refresh your mind on even the small details of what you wrote, so that if these questions come up based on your statement, you are able to answer just the way you wrote it in your DS-160. And then remember to carry all your required documentation. The instructions page that you get after you apply for your interview has a list of all the documents you need to carry. Run through it on the day before the interview. Make sure each and every document that is written there you actually carried. If you don't, guys, even if they want to approve your visa, they will probably hold it until you give them those particular documents. So it's important that you carry all those documents with you. All right, going back to the questions that could come up in your visa interview, the way I see it, we can break down these questions into like 6 key areas. First of all, there are questions about your personal details and some background information. Usually there are some work-related questions. There are questions about your employer or visa sponsors, especially for J1. There is questions about 2-year rule and intention to return to your home country, guys. Remember, these visas are non-immigrant visas, so they just allow you to work in the US for some period of time. And when that time is done, you're supposed to return to your home country. Okay? There could be questions based on cultural exchange, especially for J1 visas. And lastly, there are questions about financial relocation. Again, I'm not suggesting my list is exhaustive. There could be other lots of questions a consular officer may want to ask you about. So if any question is dropped out of the blues, guys, the only way is just to keep a sober mind, open mind, and give your best response in case such a question comes up. Okay? All right. But getting into the questions now, some of the questions that could be asked about your personal details is like, what is your name? What is your current occupation? Of course, it's not that the consular officer doesn't know that you're a teacher, because you've already indicated that in your documents. But just giving you a chance to introduce yourself to the consular officer. They could ask where you teach, what grade level, what subject. Personally, these are some of the questions I was asked about what level I was teaching and my subject, and I told the consular officer. They could ask you, so why do you want to teach in the US, guys? So let me tell you a secret. Don't say it's the money. Yeah, there are so many things you could say. You could talk about, sharing cultural, exchange, especially if you are on J1, sharing and getting to learn about other cultures. You could talk about, getting to grow as a teacher, as a um, career progression or a professional development, and so on and so forth. There are so many valid responses that you could give. You can find out more and just pick a few that you may want to express in case you are asked. All right, they could ask about where you took your education, like which college did you go to, what is your highest level of education. Of course, guys, you need at least a bachelor's degree to be a teacher in the US. So that's the reason they may ask you about these questions to just confirm that you fit the bill based on this requirement. Okay. They could ask how long was your degree studies, because your degree ideally should be equivalent to a 4-year degree course. So if your degree took shorter, depending on your country, you could actually be denied an opportunity, because your degree should be at least the equivalent of a 4-year degree in the US system. Okay. You could be asked by the consular officer to see your documents, so make sure you carry your original documents that particular day, your certificate, so that just in case they ask to see those documents, you actually have them ready for the consular officer to have a look. Okay. Moving on to work-related details, the consular officer could ask, what school will you be going to? So it's a good idea, just make sure you know the name of your school. I know you'll be excited about going to your school, know the name, know where it is. You could be asked about your job title, are you a math teacher, social studies teacher, special education teacher, and so on and so forth. So if that is asked of you, then just say it, especially as written in your documents, such as the DS 2019. They could ask, how did you secure or learn about this opportunity? You go ahead and tell them what subject and grade levels will you teach, which state, county your your school is located. So it's a good idea. Just make sure you know all these details, where your school is, which state you're going to, which city you're going to. It is a good idea to have this information so that just you don't look clueless, okay, on the day you're going for your visa interview. But moving forward to the other category, questions that usually come up about visa sponsors. So they could ask, who is your sponsoring agency? Or for the case of H1B, in case you're not going through an agency, they could ask, who is your employer? So you could mention the name of the school district if you have been hired directly by a school district, okay? They could ask, how did you learn of these opportunities? So you could talk about, how you got to hear about them, whether it's through social media, through your friends, and so on and so forth. They could ask about what support you're getting from your agency, to just have a feel like, you are not having it rough out there, that you have the support you need to be successful. They could ask about if you understand the rules, especially that when your time is done in the US, you need to go back to your home country. So in case such questions come up, make sure you answer knowledgeably, like you actually know some of these expectations that are expected of you. You could be asked about the 2-year residency requirement, especially for the J1. For many countries, when you go to the US under the J1 visa, you're expected to go back to your country for at least 2 years, because the idea is you need some time to go and share about the culture you learned in the US. Okay? So in case that comes up, make sure you are alert. But talking more about that particular aspect, actually, the 2-year rule and the intention to return to your home country. So, guys, the consular officer wants to gauge your intention, okay? Like, you actually do not plan to migrate forever to the US, because the visas are both J1 and H1B are actually non-immigrant visas. So they will gauge your intention to return to your home country. Okay. Questions usually are not asked directly, like, do you intend to go back to your home? Because everyone will say yes. Questions are indirect, like, they will ask you, how long will you be in the US? Okay. Guys, don't say you're going to the US forever. Okay. So just say the time as per your documents. Just say the time that is in your, for example, the DS 2019. So if initially you've been given 3 years, just say you're going for the 3 years, okay? If it's H1B, whatever time that you have been signed in your contract, just say that is the time you intend to be in the US, okay? They could ask, what plans do you have after completing your teaching assignment? So just say you will go back to your home country, okay? If you plan to make other plans, those will come later. Just deal with that particular point with the consular officer. Yeah. You could be asked, do you have relatives in the US? This question comes up also in the DS 160. So the way you answered it, if you said you have close relatives, a brother, a sister, maybe a father, mother, just say yes. You could be asked, are you married? Do you have kids? So are you bringing them to the US? To me, the best response to this question, I think, is to say something like, you plan for your family, like immediate family or children, maybe to visit you over there, holidays when they have closed school. How do you plan to use this chance in your home country after the program? So you could say something about how you intend to share your what you learn from the US, either back to the school you are in, or maybe a new community, and so on and so forth. Okay. Moving on to questions that may come up about cultural exchange, especially if you're J1 visa holder. So they could ask you, what aspect of culture do you intend to share with the US students? There are a lot you could share about culture. You can talk about maybe music, about language, about literature, history of Kenya, and so on and so forth. History of your country. Did I just give away that I'm from Kenya? Alright, so the history of your country, and so on and so forth. There's a lot you can share with the US studies. Okay? Alright, you could be asked what you hope to learn from these exchange opportunities. So you could say you intend to learn about, the US as well, education system, and so on and so forth. How will you manage cultural differences? And guys, this, the US is a very diverse place. You will get students most likely from other countries as well. Some may even be, just beginning to learn the English language. So if you ask about how you handle all those cultural aspects, it's good to have a good response about how you handle them. Okay? How you integrate aspects of your culture into your subject. So whatever your subject is, even if it is math, if it is literature, you can talk about bringing literature of your country. If it is languages, you could talk about how you will teach aspects of your language to the new place, and so on and so forth. Any subject, really, you can bring in aspects of different culture, including in math, okay, and so on and so forth. All right. Finally, the last aspect that I feel usually questions come up a lot about is the finances and relocation. So you could be asked, so what is your annual salary going to be? Most times the consular officer has this information because, for example, if your J1 visa is usually written in your DS 2019, but they also want to know that you actually know this information and that you will be comfortable, living within that salary that you'll be earning. They could ask who is paying for your flight, travel, and relocation costs. Guys, let me tell you a secret. This is not the time to say it is your uncle paying your bills, okay? Yeah, so if it is your sponsoring agency or the employer on the other side who is paying for your cost, then go ahead and say that. But if it is not that, then the second best answer is just say it's yourself, okay? So if it's your uncle or auntie paying your bills, they should have sorted you before you come for the interview so that you say it yourself. Otherwise, if the consular officer senses like you do not have enough financial support, or if you do not have control of finances at this particular point, it could be a reason to deny you that particular visa. Okay. They could ask about what accommodation plans you've made. So maybe say your sponsor is organizing something, if that is the case, and so on and so forth. Which state, county are you relocating to? What type of support do you have to help you settle down? So have that in mind. You can talk about your employer, especially if you're an H1B, and what support they are giving you, the sponsoring agency and what support they are giving you, and so on and so forth. How will you manage expenses before receiving your first paycheck? If this comes up, maybe you could say you've saved up some money to help you with your bills when you get to the other side before you begin getting your first your checks begin coming in. All right. So guys, like I said, this list is in no way exhaustive because questions could be as diverse as interviewers are. But in my experience, these are some of the very common questions that come up with many teachers when they go for those interviews. And I would say, luckily what I've seen with many teachers, actually, the consular officer kind of do not, grill teachers a lot. I think it's because they know you already have a job, of course, so kind of going to struggle on the other side. And so that should be encouragement on your part, but also it's not a reason to let down your guard. Prepare well, practice well, get good answers that you're going to share in case these questions come up. And we hope success will be yours, and soon you'll be on your way to the US. Alright, I wish you the very best. If you found this helpful to you, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a blessed time.